Happy Christmas Eve, or
Happy Festivus.
That's the big debate right now. It's a battle of the TV shows. The big debate these days.
These days. Is that what it is?
These days. It is December 23rd at the time of recording. It'll probably be up after that, but we're right smack dab in the middle of the holiday season. And that's the thing I did see on Twitter today trending. It was Happy Christmas Eve. So I don't know if that means the Friends.
Is trending? We need to come up with some more clever.
Then Christmas Eve. It's like a Phoebe quote, I think, and from Friends.
Oh, Happy Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And then Festivus is Seinfeld. I don't know. I've heard people are...
Festivus is more important, clearly. We actually have a special Festivus episode of the podcast today. We're doing the airing of grievances. I have a lot of problems with you people.
We're doing that right now?
Go right around the table.
No one commented on our last episode. How dare you?
Where are the comments?
Classic. So welcome to Beer Time with Books. This is the start of our second book. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Woo. Book number 2. We're really doing it. We've committed.
We're really doing it. But before we get into that, you obviously know what the schedule of things are. We're doing part 1 of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But to start things off, it is Beer Time with Books. We're going to ask what we're drinking this week. And I'll just start this time. We have a new Boulevard pack we checked out. I have the American Brown Ale. Pretty good.
Nice.
And I'm Brian, by the way. I forgot to do that last time.
We all know who you are.
Everybody knows who you are.
I'm Jamie. I'm drinking the Boulevard Bully Porter, which is a robust American porter.
Oh. Robust.
It tastes pretty robust.
I'm Danny, and I'm drinking a LaCroix.
Oh.
Specifically, Pamplemousse.
Nice. As long as somebody's got the beer, the title still holds.
It still stands.
Something's still going
LaCroix
down
Time
here.
with Books it doesn't have the same ring to it.
LaCroix Time with Books. I like it.
LaCroix with the boys.
Just one boy. So with that, one other housekeeping item. This is actually kind of a short week. We had a little bit more time between the last episode and now, but we're going to give some quick updates on some of the other media we've been consuming since the last episode. And we can start with...
Sure, me? Not much has changed since a week ago, but I did watch the episode with the Red Wedding.
Well, yeah, just say that, just in case somebody hasn't seen the show.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I watched the Red Wedding, which was alarming. That's all I have to say about that.
It's so funny that episode has a reputation that like precedes it, because a lot of people know about that episode in general from when it first aired, even if you hadn't watched the show, because you knew about it.
Yeah, I knew about it, and literally there's been like maybe 3 weddings in Game of Thrones already, and every single time it was about to be the wedding, I was like, Brian, is this the red wedding?
This what's happening?
And he kept just responding with, there are a lot of weddings.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
But now 2 weddings in a row, people have died, so weddings seem like bad news bears.
We won't say who.
Yeah.
Weddings are bad news bears.
Bad news bears. Saying from the person who just got married.
Right. Weddings are bad news
bears. Danny?
Not much has changed. I watched the first 2 episodes on Netflix of the Great British Baking Show Holiday Edition.
Oh.
And
that's thematic though. It's good that we asked, because that's you're getting in the spirit, man.
No, it's good. It's adorable. They like bring back contestants that didn't win from other seasons, and it's festive and adorable, and they make everything is holiday themed.
Yes.
And it's nice.
That does sound nice. I want us to watch that at some point.
I was really sad. I started watching the first one, and then I finished it, and I was like, I'm ready to watch 30 more of these, and there are only 2 on right now. I don't know if they're going to add more, but there's only 2, and I got sad.
It's such a British thing to have Christmas specials. Like, that's built into so much of the programming over there. And I'll just to tie it into what we're talking about today. So this Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy started out as a radio broadcast, and it was so successful in its first year that it had a Christmas special, actually, because the BBC just does that. Anytime that something does well, they're like, let's do a Christmas episode. So that's pretty interesting. And then for me, I've been watching Game of Thrones with Jamie. We watched 3 last night, so we were committed. We were committed. So we're about halfway through season 4.
Because the person at the wedding died, and then I was like,
so
well, I need to know what happens after that.
Keep going.
So many more.
Yeah. So then there's been that, and then also I tend to do things seasonally just because, like, I don't know, especially in the wintertime, anything that I've, like, played before, I always want to revisit it. But I just got Civilization, the game series. It's Civilization 6, and I've played those on winter breaks because I have so much time, and that game takes so much time. But I've always liked it, and I like looking at the civilizations. And with Game of Thrones, I'm just like, yes, I know all the strategies from these people. So anyway, that's what we've been consuming this week, and now we're going to be getting into the actual book here. And as we've mentioned in previous episodes, we're going to have different leaders for every book, and we've been building up to this for the last couple episodes. But today's leader for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is Jamie.
It's me. I was telling Danny and Brian before we started that they both seem way more prepared than I am, which is fine. I can moderate.
You'll see very soon that that's not true.
I am a high school English teacher, so this is easy and good.
It's all about moderating. The moderating skills are where it's at.
Good.
It is.
But the place that I wanted to start at, I do know this much. I do know. And this is very general, so I think it'll go into a lot of different places. But the reason that we're reading this is because I mean, you guys too, but I have always heard about this book, and it's like got a cult following, and it's so famous, and I see it at Barnes & Noble every single time I go there. But I didn't really know what it was about, and I figured, like, something that's such a pop culture phenomenon I should read. Mm-hmm. But I also had some, like, preconceived notions about maybe what it might be about. And so far, those have been mostly invalid.
Yes, I would agree.
I
would agree with that.
I wanted to start with that of, like, what were your expectations going in, and how was the book the same or different than what you expected?
I didn't actually have I hardly had any preconceived notions about this book. All I knew is that it was always on those, like, lists of top 5, top 50, top 1,000 books you should read in your lifetime or whatever, and it's always on those lists. I knew that it had something to do with space. I didn't know anything about it. It was like one of those things I always saw, but I don't think I've ever picked it up and read the back of it.
Yeah.
So that's all I knew.
That's all. I would say I definitely wasn't expecting what I got when I started reading this book, just because of how ingrained it is with pop culture. To me, that made it seem like it might be more accessible, I suppose. Like, I know that it's science fiction, and maybe it's because I don't have a lot of experience with the genre, but to me, what I was expecting was kind of like a simplistic story that happens out in space, and it's pretty funny. Like, that's what I thought it was, because everyone says the book's hilarious.
That was what I was expecting too.
Yeah.
We talked about that before.
Yeah, and it's just, when you get into it, it is all of that. Like, the story is pretty simple, but the actual, like, science fiction aspects of it is very complex, and that to me was like something that was surprising. I didn't think it was going to reach all these instances where he's making up laws or, like, using real astrophysics to describe what's going on. So
yeah, that was surprising to me too.
I feel like from the cover of it, which we all have different covers.
All three of us have different.
And Danny's is literally the worst cover of a novel I've ever seen. Ever.
Horrible.
I'm so intrigued because it looks so different from all the other covers I've seen.
The pictures on the.
Oh yeah, we'll have to take a picture of all of them. But Danny's is really bad.
This one was published in 2009.
Okay.
Was that a shitty year for
publishing?
That's a thing. Book covers do go through
it's
waves.
True. Like all the ones from the 70s. I feel like 70s.
Yeah. There was a recent floral book cover trend, I think. So yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting. I think my brain was expecting something in between. Something in between.
Beer spill. Keep going.
right. Everything's fine. Something in between, like a spoof of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And like Spaceballs. I don't know which kind of is a spoof of Star Wars, isn't it? I don't know.
So like a spoof on a spoof.
A spoof on a spoof. I guess like I assumed that it was making more like cultural. What's the word I'm looking for? Commentary on like what was popular at the time, but also I don't know. Maybe that's silly.
I was surprised at how like the first half at least is like pretty timeless. Like it feels not. Is that what you were saying? Were you saying that it was talking about like what was happening at the time?
I don't
like,
know
cultural
what I was
commentary?
saying. Yes and no.
It just didn't
I
seem
spilled
very
my beer and got distracted.
That's fine. It didn't seem super specific to the time. They like I don't know.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem. I couldn't place a ton of the set. I didn't place a ton of the setting.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Well, I think part of it too that adds to that appeal is with science fiction. Again, this is one that I think we all could say that we don't have a lot of experience with, but the fact that like there is a limitless amount of like technology that can occur in a science fiction novel, because that's basically what it's saying. There's no rules in what's current in reality, that, you know, the actual Hitchhiker's Guide itself is like an ebook. You know what I mean? So there's all these factors like that that add to it, because
That
it's
are,
not
like, before its time.
Yeah, but it's not going to like tie it to a previous time where like you'd have another book where people are talking about dialing up rotary phones.
Right.
Like this is all stuff that's happening in the future that society's aspiring to get to. So that kind of like adds to the quality to it a little bit. And I don't know if that's the case for a lot of science fiction, but I definitely see that would be an appeal.
Yeah, but I also, like, as I was reading it, I don't know, something about the tone surprised me, and I don't know how to describe this exactly. I guess I saw it more as, like, when I went into it, it was going to be more comical than it is. Like, it's funny, but it's more, like, dry satire. Like, it felt kind of like Kurt Vonnegut if he wanted.
That's exactly
I was
what
gonna
I thought.
say that, yes.
Which, like,
It
surprised
felt-
me a lot.
I thought it was gonna, from like the way people talk about this book, I thought I was gonna be rolling around on the floor, crying, screaming, laughing.
Yeah.
Like,
I also-
people think it's so fun. I mean, I thought it was funny, but I just didn't expect
I also
it.
was worried that because everybody says it's so funny that I was gonna think it was cheesy.
Like,
I feel like most of those things that it's like, I laughed out loud, blah blah. Like, it's normally not that funny.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I thought it felt very like Vonnegut-y.
that's exactly. I immediately
was
thought
interesting.
Vonnegut, which
Yeah.
is
Well, I looked up I like the context for a lot of the books that I read, and I did immediately think of Kurt Vonnegut because he has so much that's based in like a science fiction genre. And so his first book, Kurt Vonnegut, in 1952 was Player Piano, so that was a good distance behind this, because this first aired on the radio in 1978, so that's a good distance away. And then 1963 was Cat's Cradle, 1969 with Slaughterhouse-Five, which
this makes me think of
Slaughterhouse-Five for sure, because it's the same type of thing where
that makes sense to me.
you know, there's a lot of endless possibilities because the rules are kind of breaking there. But I just thought that like there was comparisons to that, and just the style that is brought up here because of those limitless possibilities. Like I thought of Rick and Morty, which I don't know if you guys have seen, but like I looked up the creator, he said that he was inspired by this. So there's a lot in the science fiction comedy realm that I'm not that in tune with, but like it definitely did remind me of Kurt Vonnegut, which was super cool because I like her a lot.
Yeah, no, I was pleasantly surprised by that dry humor throughout, and it really it reminded me of Sirens of Titan. They're like talking about going to space, and so that was the book that my brain kept going to that.
I haven't read that one.
I haven't either.
I actually
That's why I thought of Slaughterhouse-Five.
I've actually only read half of it, but
That could be a possibility for a later episode.
I mean, they do go to space in Slaughterhouse-Five too. But I really quickly summary of the book. We didn't do that yet, or at least of what we. I know, at least of what we've read so far. So we start off on Earth, just a normal day. You know,
normal Thursday.
So it's a normal Thursday. Our one of our main characters, whose name is Arthur Dent, wakes up and finds that his house is being bulldozed down. Which, that's unfortunate.
That's a bummer.
It's a bummer.
He was pretty bummed about it.
Yeah, he was pretty upset. And there's a chain of events, but he tries to stop it, lays down in front of the bulldozer, is arguing with this guy. And then his friend, Ford Prefect, is how I've been saying that in my mind, shows up and asks him to go get a drink. And we are told pretty immediately that Ford is an alien. But
quickly.
Yeah. Arthur,
like really soon.
Arthur doesn't know that. And Ford has come to tell Arthur that the world is going to end. And
pretty casually.
Yeah. Just very please.
Arthur has a crisis and
drink
Ford's just
all these beers and you'll be fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And then the world ends, which Brian and I were reading right around the same time, the first part of the book. And I remember him sitting there just being like, it just happened. The world just ended.
Things escalated very quickly.
I feel like a lot of big events in the first half, I mean, that's they're just very and then they get sucked into a, different space-time zone.
Those could be topics of whole books.
Yeah.
And it just happens it kind of reminded me of The Good Place in the same vein of anything can happen, and also things happen that should be a whole season can sometimes be that just happened in an episode.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of.
We're back to this now. So then the world ends and they happen to get a ride. They hitchhike onto the spaceship that is invading Earth, and not invading really. It's a fun parallel between the house being bulldozed down and the Earth being destroyed is they just need it for a new super highway. Super galactic highway. They need the space. So that's being blown up. And then we're in space. This feels like I'm saying so much in a summary because a lot does happen.
A lot happens
so quickly. But they're on the spaceship, and there are two different species on the spaceship, and the cooks like hitchhikers because it makes the Vogons. Is that?
Yeah.
Vogons angry, right?
Yeah.
And then the Vogon gets mad, leader guy gets mad, kicks him off of that spaceship. You think that they are dead for a chapter and a half, and then they get sucked into a different spaceship.
Which is following some scientific concept that I didn't follow 100%.
I have
no
idea what it's talking about.
Wait, what's it called?
Which is a great place to start, I think. But there's also this background story of this guy who's galactic president.
Yes. Yeah, a puppet kind of.
Yeah, it says he doesn't have any power, but he acts as
six people know that though, that he doesn't have any power. Six people specifically
in the universe know that he doesn't have any power, but everybody else thinks he does. And he has stolen this special spaceship, and I don't know what the special spaceship does, but it's there.
It kept talking about improbability, and the thing that was so funny about it. So that's, I think it's even in the name of the ship if I find it in here, but it specifically focuses in on the improbable and how that concept of improbability and impossibility was harnessed to be able to travel across the entire universe and make improbable things happen. With what happens at the very end when we find out that Arthur's actually met the president on Earth because the girl that he's with, Arthur was trying to pick up at a bar, which is the most improbable thing. And I thought the funniest thing about
party, not a bar.
Oh, sorry, party.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing at the end was they're all this is so weird and impossible. What's the probability that will happen again? They're it probably will, because it's so improbable that everything's probably going to happen. It was just I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That whole sequence of events confused
I
me.
thought it was funny because of that. And I get the general gist of the improbability and how it makes things happen because they're improbable. I didn't get the full understanding of the science, I guess, but it was pretty funny to me.
Yeah, and the sequence of events between them almost dying and like getting to meet the president, where they're in like a cube and it's pink and they're like,
oh yeah,
they're hallucinating a bunch of things, or maybe not. And that has something to do with how the probability machine works. And I was just confused for that whole chapter. I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I liked that when they're talking about how improbable it is that the ship picked up the two people, our main characters, by itself. The woman, is her name Trillian?
Yeah.
Trillian? She says, while we were in improbability drive, like,
Yeah.
like
Matter
high
of
speed,
fact,
like,
yeah.
I don't know. She was just like, this is the ship was in improbability drive when we picked them up. But that's incredible. No, it's just very, very improbable. How do you say this guy's name? Is it Zaphod?
I've been saying Zaphod Beeblebrox in my head.
Yeah. This is the funny thing
my
about
new Instagram handle.
This is the funny thing about podcasting.
Beeblebrox.
Yeah, podcasting about science fiction. Like, you don't think about it, but then you actually have to like talk about what all of these things are.
Yeah, this is
out
horrible.
loud.
Someone correct us, because we're probably like, this would be like if we pronounced Star Wars characters' names wrong, probably, and everyone's sitting in the at home being like, it's
we're talking about
Zayfood.
we're talking about Harry Potter. And we're
How dare
like,
you.
we're talking about like Hermione.
People
like,
are cringing.
It's like, oh please.
We're
stop.
so sorry.
Yeah, it's just know that we're sorry and that we know we don't know what we're talking about. But Zaphod Beeblebrox is I want to ask you guys questions about like his motive, because I don't know that it's been revealed, or if it has, I have missed it. But he has like this background story of being the president, and they're revealing this new thing, the heart of gold, the improbability machine in the spaceship. And then suddenly he just, like, as they're revealing it, he steals it. And I don't understand why.
Well, I think part of like what I had read into is that he kind of has a narcissistic like edge to his character.
Oh, for sure.
Because on the ship, he is watching so intently all of the news stories that are coming out about him.
He's like listening to the radio about himself.
Yeah, so to me, that was like some of a drive, because then you also think about everybody talking about the fact that the president doesn't actually have power, regardless of how many people know about that. For somebody that's that narcissistic, I feel like that would be such an internal battle every day to be like, I'm such a figurehead, but I don't have the power to like do anything about it. So I think that there was like a narcissistic thing of like, everyone's going to be talking about a thing that I did in my own power to do so.
I guess there's that. I think I assumed that he stole it in order to distract from something else, because that's like his whole job is to
figurehead.
distract.
Yeah, that too.
But I don't think that we maybe know what that is, if that's a thing.
I like when we were talking about his ego, and he says that he's very insecure, and like he's just readily admitting that he has like an ego problem, and he's like, I just want to hear about myself.
Like, please don't turn it off.
He says, if there's anything more important than my ego around, I want it caught and shot now. And he's like kind of joking, but he's like,
no,
he's
actually,
pretty
no.
serious.
Let's
like,
do that.
Why? What is this? What is more important?
Let's do that.
Is what I want. All right. Well, guys, I don't know. There are a lot of things I want to talk about, but I feel like they're not connected necessarily. Like, I want to talk about the characters, and my dog is vomiting.
We'll be right back.
Yeah, pause.
Was that what that was?
And we're back. This episode has been full of detours, just like this book. But
this episode is brought to you by beer spilling and dog vomit.
We wanted this episode to be as chaotic and detoury as this book. It's thematic, dude.
Just you don't know what's gonna happen next.
Keeping everyone on their toes.
Anything can happen. What are the possibilities that our dog would throw up in the middle of our episode? It's so impossible that it's probable.
It's improbable.
So anyway, I think before we were going, Jamie was getting into the characters.
Yeah, I think what I was saying before that happened was there are a lot of things to talk about. There's so many interesting plot details and like funny little moments, but overall, I think the story is driven by our main two characters, and also our like side character guy in Beeblebrox. But I just want to talk about what we think of them as main characters and how they're characterized so far, and if we like them, if we don't, I don't know.
Sure. I'll say for Arthur, I'll just hop into this because it actually relates to a quote that I grabbed from the Rick and Morty creator, but when he was talking about how this had influence, and again, this is something that I thought about, like they have similar vibes to them, Rick and Morty in this story as well. I decided to see if it was, and he said, in the writer's room, it feels like I'm actively referencing some parallel from Hitchhiker's Guide. I think that's where I learned everything about the concept of an infinite universe as entertainment as it pertained emotionally to the common man. And I think that that's so important in this book with Arthur that, you know, all of these other beings know what's going on. All of these impossible things that to Arthur seems insane, to them it's just like, it's fine. So having it grounded in him being in the story that, you know, he has the human perspective. He sees things in the sky and you hear descriptions all around them of when those ships were in the sky, they were so improbably big that people were going into shock upon seeing them. So like that's the human element to this story, because like I've thought about that with space. Like this book kind of gave me an existential crisis, because like a lot of scientists have talked about that as humans perceive things so easily because there's so many similarities that we don't have to think about them that much. When you see something that big, your brain is like, I'm not ready for this. I don't know what like could even be that big. I don't know what it could possibly do. So I like Arthur in this story, and regardless of how testy he can get with people, he freaking deserves it, because like look what he's going through.
Yeah.
So I like having his perspective there, because he's the uninitiated going through some of like the craziest stuff in the universe. So I like Arthur a lot.
I also really like the moments between Arthur and Ford where they're talking about the Hitchhiker's Guide, and like clearly he's going through so much, like you said, and Ford just keeps being like, read the cover, don't panic, you're fine.
As if that's good enough.
I know. It's like, how can you not panic? And also it feels like so ominous of like he freaks out when Arthur panics, and it's like, what's gonna happen if he like totally freaks out?
Yeah, and that it is the cover of like the book that it says that.
Just don't panic.
I like also that Arthur is kind of playing the part of us in the book. Like, I feel like I read the stuff and I'm like, this is crazy, and I'd be freaking out, and I identify so strongly with Arthur because Ford's just like, just drink some beer and get over it. The world's gonna end. And I'm just like, but this is a big deal. This is a huge deal.
But excuse me.
And I mean, you can even identify with like the small, well, it's not that small, but like the, you know, the indignity of waking up and seeing that your house is going to be bulldozed.
Yeah.
And they're like, you should have checked the super obscure room where it was posted 9 months ago or whatever. And I just, I was really frustrated for Arthur in that moment. I was just like, bureaucracy.
That whole time I was sitting there like, this has to be illegal. Like, they have to notify him months in advance.
Yeah, I was very mad for Arthur, which is
silly,
the point. But
yeah.
Yeah, and I am curious about just the rest of the characters going forward, because like it is that relatable to read along with Arthur, but now we are getting more characters into the cast, because at the end of the section that we read, that's when we found out that President Zaphod had that gal that Arthur knew, and like there's another human perspective there as well. But like now we're gonna get a mix of all of those minds going forward, which I think will be really interesting, because there hasn't been a lot of time to sit and think yet for any of the characters, because everything again happens so fast, and like all of these things are happening within minutes. Like pretty much everything we've read has been within like such a short amount of time,
maybe 10 minutes.
I think he says something, Ford says something about the end of the world being 12 minutes away, the edge of the world being 12, I don't remember, but it's like less than 15 minutes. I feel like
so that'll be kind of fun to see. I think just, you know, what the girl has to say about it too, and if she's like as torn up about it, because like there's literally nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, but already we've seen a little bit of her character before we even knew that she was human necessarily. I think she's human, right? There's nothing.
No, yeah,
she's not like Ford, right? She wasn't disguised.
She's human.
Yeah, she is.
But she's been living with the president for a while now has been his girlfriend for like 6 months or something.
Yeah, I think
so seeing that perspective will be interesting, I think, as we get to know her a little bit better, because right now she seems fine. She's like more in charge of anything than everybody else is, which is interesting. But I agree, I really like Arthur as that character. I don't know, going into this novel, I don't think that I realized it started on Earth. Like, I don't know. I had no preconceived notions. Yeah. Before I read anything, I don't think I had any preconceived notions, really, that, like, I was like, it's in space, and it's aliens, and we're bopping around.
In space.
But I don't know that I realized it was going to start out with such, like, a mundane activity.
I like that. Up. I like that contrast.
Yeah,
Arthur is like so exceedingly normal.
Yeah,
and all of this like,
he's very
and
boring.
He's just like, I just want to live in my house, and I don't know. I just feel like it's interesting to like see all of these extraordinary things happen to him.
I'm also super interested in why is he the main character? Like, why did Ford feel the need to save him?
Oh yeah,
like,
and they've been friends. Have they been friends for the whole time that Ford has been on Earth? Because he's been on Earth for like 15 years, and then he befriends Arthur.
I think
I don't know how long it was, but they've been friends for a while.
Yeah, it'd been a long time.
Yeah, because that hasn't been addressed. Yeah, and that we even know the motivation for that.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah,
like I know. Well, there is some motivation because he's wanting to add to the Hitchhiker's Guide. But he kind of already said that he knows what he's gonna say. It was harmless, and then he's gonna mostly harmless.
Yeah,
that was really funny. Arthur was so indignant. That was another point where I was indignant with Arthur. I was just like, "That's all you have to say."
Yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting about the two of them is I also saw this when I was looking into it a little bit. Is when Douglas Adams was first coming up with the idea, the only thing that he wanted to do was destroy the Earth. Like, that was the idea. And then he was thinking, well, there has to be an alien there to like give context to what's going on, because who else is going to be able to like explain why everything's going down, or like be a catalyst for it in the first place.
How to get out of it.
Yeah, so it's like funny to see that, that wasn't really the focus of the story in the first place, but that he kind of just like added it in out of necessity. And so it, like, just to see, knowing that he came in a little bit later into the story, to see his motivations later on in the book will be pretty interesting as to like how he resolves introducing him when he wasn't part of the story anyway. So
yeah, but I'm also interested because I know that this is technically a series, a trilogy in 5 parts. Like, how many of those things will be settled by the end of this novel?
Well, go ahead.
No, just, did he write this like as wanting it to be part of a series, or did he write it as a standalone and then add?
It was on radio as a series. So this is what I looked up, is it was a 6-part thing, but he wasn't initially before that. It just was popular, and then he kept building and building and building. And the other thing I'll say about that is when I looked at the sequels online, apparently they all start from the same place, and they all have to do with Arthur.
Oh.
But there are small tweaks to the story. That's what I read, and I hopefully I'm right on that. But I saw that like all of the stories are a similar like vein, but there are other things that come up. But I'm pretty sure they all start on Earth with the Earth going to end.
That's interesting.
And again, it goes back to his like original point of the story where he's thinking like, I want to write a story about destroying the Earth, and then he wanted to do it so much he did it 5 times.
Like,
so.
I just really want to do this.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so back into Ford's character and maybe sort of his motivations. We know that he is an editor for this book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that details things that you need to know if you are traveling through the universe. Is it a multiverse? I don't think so.
Yeah, just universe, I think, yeah.
And it's funny because they keep comparing. They go back and forth between like what the Hitchhiker's Guide says and what the Encyclopedia Galactica says, and how that's so like sterile versus the Hitchhiker's Guide is like the things you actually need to know.
With a flair.
With a flair. It's a little bit sassy sometimes. And like we already mentioned, Earth's description is just harmless and mostly harmless. But looking at him as a character, I think is really interesting. Like I love that idea of just romping around, writing about...
Just for the general knowledge of everyone.
Yeah, just like helping everybody out. Yeah. He just explores and might die, and he seems so calm the whole time.
Yeah.
Why was he so upset when he found out that Zaphod?
Yeah.
Why was he so upset when he found out that he had like visited Earth?
Because
he was like, I've been there for
he was
15
there.
years. Yeah. Oh, is it because he didn't say hi?
Well,
he was trying to get off of Earth. So he landed on Earth to like do research and then got stuck there for 15 years.
So he was okay. Got
it. He kept trying to look for spaceships to like hitchhike off.
Oh, so Phil Zaphod.
Yeah.
So Phil like was there and he
went to a party and then
he could have hitchhiked with him.
Yeah.
But then
he was like,
but he took Gal instead.
Yeah.
Okay,
got it.
Yeah, and they're also related somehow, which I don't know what this means, but they're semi-cousins.
Yeah. We haven't delved into that.
Yeah. I took that just to mean like distantly related, but I didn't know if that meant like in a familial way or just like they're both aliens.
Yeah, like are they even the same species? Because Zaphod has like 2 heads and 3 arms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we even know what Ford is in like a human form.
Yeah.
But
he looks like a.
Does he have an alien form?
I don't think we know that. Yeah.
Okay.
We barely know him.
Yeah.
Again, it's only been within the last like 10 minutes.
I know, but I feel like we should know that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's cool, and it also is like because his character came in and then it evolved so much. The other quote from Douglas Adams that I saw is like, the Hitchhiker's Guide itself was so enthralling after he had started doing it that like the book became about the guide.
Yeah.
And so like that's the other thing is how it evolved with Ford to then get into something that Ford is working on, which then gets into be the main subject of the book. Because there's like significant aspects, which again, when I was talking about like how surprising it was to read this, it's because of the guide that it gets more complex than it probably would have been otherwise. Because, you can just... like tell a simple story, but the fact that there's so many detours and there's footnotes here, all these descriptions, that's why we're getting so much of this information about the world itself, which like that's what I think makes it so unique. And again, like you have science fiction in the world at your fingertips, but you're essentially writing about a book.
Yeah. I think that was the other thing in this book that made me think of Kurt Vonnegut. Like the chapters that are just solely the Hitchhiker's Guide that basically just give a sassy commentary on what's already happening, and also gives us vital information. My brain kept going back to Cat's Cradle with the book of the religious texts that's
the Okinonism.
Yeah, the book of Okinonism.
Yeah, or Bokenonism. Yeah, Bokenonism.
There it is. I was trying to think of the letter that went in front.
Yeah, it was B. Yeah, Bokenonism.
Yeah, because like there's like little moments where it's like commenting on what's happening and like who these people are,
like interludes, kind of.
Yeah,
and I thought of Vonnegut too.
Yeah, which I like that.
I want to dive into that and see if Douglas Adams was inspired by Kurt Vonnegut, just because like I am kind of getting hints of that, and I could see it in some of the more recent pop culture like sci-fi. Like I said, there's some that I looked up that they were just like, this straight up is inspired by Hitchhiker's Guide. So it'd be interesting to see if Kurt Vonnegut like inspired that to go on. And obviously he was inspired by other people too, but like there's just a lot reading science fiction, it just seems like there's a lot of debts going back and forth in the storytelling, which I think that's kind of a thing with genre fiction. There's a lot of stuff that keeps them unified, but like this is a pretty early adopter. Like this is coming out around the same time that Star Wars is in the 70s. So like obviously it wasn't as much of a cultural phenomenon for Star Wars to like have broken through yet. So it's just like interesting to see on where all these influences are coming back and forth. Cause like we've all talked about, we've seen it come from something and seen it sent out to other things, which I think is fun to read it for that reason, because this is probably like the pinnacle of something that gets referenced nowadays. So
Yeah, which as a thing to maybe end on, I don't really know where we're at on time.
We can just do final thoughts.
Okay, so as a thing to end on, now that we're halfway through a very short book that is a cultural phenomenon that gets referenced all the time, I think my final question is, like, why do we think it is the cultural phenomenon that it is? Like, reading half of it, I really like it, but I don't know that I've been blown away by the story so far. I think it's fun, but I think that prospect interests me. Like, I'm fascinated by why this story is the one that everybody's sort of grasped onto. So if you guys have any thoughts on that, go for it.
Well, I just think it's the similar thing that, like, it's the high and low culture mix, which is what has always drawn me into, like, postmodern works. That's like a staple, that, you know, there's the lowbrow stuff where he's doing all these dry jokes. Like, on page 34, he was saying, the ships hung in the sky like bricks don't. And stuff like that. Like, he just has a bunch of jokes like that. They're all like, they're all like really lowbrow things that, like, you can still find enjoyment, you know, just off of those little things alone. But I think that when obviously our dog's better now,
He's feeling
hopping
great.
around in the background. But I think that because it's not limited to just those jokes, and that it does have the guide to get into, like, the stuff that would appeal to, like, really hardcore science fiction people, where there's laws in the galaxy, no matter how absurd they are, you know, there's at least something, and there's all of this world building, even in a short book. Like, we know so much about this universe in 100 pages that it's almost like baffling that he was able to fill that much in, but it's because the guide is easily referenced and you don't have to, like, build it in that well. So I think that it's probably that. The mix of both, to me, seems to be the thing that keeps it.
Yeah, I think it's appealing to a lot of
a
lot of readers, at least. But I also agree, I'm not floored.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe people are
I'm curious to
shaking
see where
their
it goes.
fists at us.
I'm curious to see where it goes.
Interested.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where the story ends up.
Because, like I said, the ending can be like a full star for me, and, like, just seeing where it goes, like, it could be absolutely insane. Like, it could honestly go anywhere, and already has. So
I'm really excited to read this next chapter, actually, because we read through chapter 13, right? And
I guess we should have mentioned that.
we read through chapter 13.
Everybody knows
halfway.
about halfway. Yeah, that's our general rule. About halfway.
And we realize that Trillian is a human, and that
Trisha Million.
and that and
McMillian. Trisha McMillian. Yeah.
we, like, meet her, and then they all are together, and they're, like, talking about how they all know each other, and I am excited to see what else happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of cliffhangers, I think, because, like, there's the end of the chapter where they just get, like, shot out like a cork, and that what they said of the spaceship.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of those.
And it's like they're gonna die in 30 seconds, but the next chapter is literally just an excerpt from the Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah.
Like,
And you want to, like, sometimes I didn't skip, but sometimes I want to skip.
Yeah, so there's definitely, like, stuff that we don't know, because, like, it's just the kind of story. Again, like I said, I feel like this whole episode is just, like, Brian doing pop culture references, but, like, the Good Place cliffhanger thing, like, it does the same formula.
Yeah.
The Good Place makes you want to keep watching because there's always that cliffhanger, which is like, and they got shot out of a spaceship. ...
But
Okay, I gotta
it
read.
It cuts to something else that's happening, and then you have to, like, wait, you know, until it goes, until it returns to the scene.
Well, one more thing from me for the pop culture references. Again, that's just gonna be
Brian wants to talk pop culture.
Pop culture, baby. So, Radiohead, the album OK Computer. So this was all, like, BBC. So this is, you know, a very, very ingrained to the British culture because it started there. And this all takes place in the UK, right?
Yeah.
And so the band was actually listening to the radio broadcast when they were on tour for their second album, The Bends. And we haven't gotten to it yet, but apparently there's a quote that they pulled from this book, OK Computer. And that's...
I think we already
read
it. So I literally reversed that. I was reading it, and someone was talking to their
and
little
said, "Okay,
Siri,
computer."
and they said, "Okay, computer," and I was like, Radiohead.
Yeah.
And I got that.
Yeah.
I'm proud.
Well, and the other...
I got that.
I didn't catch
Pop
that.
culture
But
reference.
I know what you're talking about now.
It's when they're talking to their version of Siri, who's kind of sassy, who
Yeah.
I really like.
Yeah.
What's the name of the robot? Because that's the other thing.
Marvin is the robot.
Marvin, yeah. So that's the other reference from that album is, I don't know if like it's something that we had heard yet either. I just had seen it from a separate thing, but he is the paranoid android.
Okay.
I don't know if he gets dubbed that later, but he's the paranoid android. And then in the book they say "Okay, computer." So "Okay, computer" has a lot of debts to Hitchhiker's
That's
Guide.
interesting.
That's really interesting.
Huh.
So that's pretty cool.
I'm trying to find
Brian
it.
was
It's
so
in
much
here.
more prepared than me, and it's fine.
I can't remember where it says that about OK Computer, but it's whenever they're talking to the guy.
Yeah,
And they're-
I just thought that was cool because like again with all the
there it
debts.
is. On page 88.
Page 88 of Danny's version. Okay, he said computer. Yeah, okay, cool.
The voice circuit sprang to life again. Why, hello there, they said. All I want to do is make your day nicer and nicer and nicer. It's just like a helpful little Siri guy.
Ahead of its time again. So yeah, I think that I don't know. That's all really cool, and I think that that's what I'm getting a lot out of this read is just like the pop culture stuff, which I think is a lot of fun. So I'll just be curious to see where it goes from here. But this is definitely out of our comfort zone, so it's cool to be doing it.
I'm going to talk about pop culture for one more second. When people say the Google Assistant, don't people say "Okay Google"?
Okay, Google, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's not related, but
They do.
When people,
I
when
wouldn't
people talk
doubt
to
it. I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
Their little Google Assistant, they say "Okay Google."
Well, you can also program because, like, for Alexa, you have the option. Oh, we have one, and it's lit up. You can actually say "computer."
Okay.
And Jamie did not like that when we first got it. She was like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a little
scary
too
to
cold."
me.
Yeah, I don't like that.
So,
No,
I
that,
don't
okay,
like
that's
Okay, computer.
maybe not related, but whatever.
I
So-
don't know, yeah.
anyway,
Well, thanks, guys. We're gonna read the next half of the book, and we'll have our next episode after Danny gets back from China.
whoa,
So that'll be a minute, but
we'll be there.
We'll be back soon.
So yeah, thanks for joining us on Beer Time with Books. We got
and LaCroix.
and LaCroix, LaCroix with
With the boys.
the boy.
The boy.
Boys, yeah. So anyway, anybody want to volunteer for the outro?
Jamie, I think it's your turn to do the outro music.
Oh, so low volume. Oh my.
Keep going.
We'll see you next time.